Hello, everyone. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to change everything you currently know about marking and feedback forever. And for me, this has been easily a 10 plus year journey in terms of understanding formative assessment, marking workload, deep dives, the reliability, the quality assurance of work scrutiny, book looks, and all those kind of headaches, and trying to work out how to reduce that burden on teachers, keep more teachers in the profession, improve school leadership confidence in terms of quality assurance and reliability, and move the profession to an entirely new way of thinking about marking and feedback. So in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to change your views forever on that phrase marking and feedback. So tune in. I'm going to share my slides in the next 30 seconds or so. Now, I'll start off by saying that not all schools and colleges are ready for this, and I'll explain what I mean in a moment. But let me just put my slides. Marking. It drives teachers bonkers. You know the score. Marking is a never-ending headache, and it's compounded by that perception that written feedback is king, and that it's the only way to assess student work, and inspections, weak quality assurance, parental perceptions, deep dive headaches, where we look at work in greater detail, work scrutiny, those kind of things, that they lead to maybe a narrow view of progress. And this can drive teachers to their kitchen table on a Sunday night, marking this giant pile of books instead of spending time with their family. I know I'm not the only person that's lived this life, marking into the midnight hours. Now, the marking dialogue has changed significantly in England over the last 10 years, but we're not there yet. And again, I'll remind you that not all schools are ready for this concept. So for teachers watching this is just a little insight into my Research Inside Guide to Feedback when you are ready, and I can help bring this to life in your school. So let me just start off with a bit of data. So this is a website analytic, or Google Analytics should say, screencast from the back end of my website. The blue line represents academic year, so it's easy to spot the summer holidays. The red circle shows you how many teachers have logged into the website over the last 12 months, clicking, scrolling, moving around 6.5 million times. In essence, I know exactly what teachers are clicking on, how long they're reading it for, and what they're looking at next. And after 20 million views, it's an incredible bit of data. Here's the interesting thing. At the very bottom of the slide, you'll see the average reading time is 72 seconds. So you have to work quickly. And in this attention economy, I can see people tuning in and out of this live stream. But if you stick with it, by the end, in 15 minutes, you'll have a totally different view on marking and feedback forever. How far away is your school from flipping to this model? This is what I think I've seen on my travels. Now, I've been to probably just shy of 600 schools now, all across the UK and 18 countries across the world. Now, you take all school priorities, behavior, curriculum, teaching and learning, whatever it might be, you're always going to be in this sliding scale, that illusion of chasing consistency rather than seeking coherence. But if we just think about teaching and learning or marking, you get some schools firmly on the left, you must do it this way, some schools on the right, not really sure, couldn't care less, or some schools that have got some agreed methods, rigorous research methods, sharing and comparing, those kind of things, and firmly in the middle. So it's something to consider because it fits into all school priorities, this grid. Now, here's a thing, I never knew this. I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I discovered the etymological meaning behind the word assessment. And I have written a blog about this. So it means to sit beside. How often do you get to sit beside students? Its origins, Roman tax place, I come and tax you in the marketplace to assess, take some gold coins away, you can now trade. It means lots of different things now. So to sit beside students is rare, and we've got this current buzzword live marking across the profession, which is honourable, desirable, and a nice idea, and it's in lots of school policies. But it's not enough, because still we have teachers sitting on the kitchen table marking a giant pile of books, or on their own crunching data on a screen when students aren't beside them. And this is just the nature of teaching as it is today. There's one teacher, lots of students in the classroom, lots of other pressures, number crunching data, marking piles of books, plus exam board pressures and things like that. Now, let me give you a quick backstory. Here is 7 disadvantaged schools across England. With UCL, I managed to publish a piece of research on verbal feedback. These schools have a high proportion of disadvantaged pupils. In these schools, research from Teacher Tap suggested that they typically mark once a week and use a specified colour pen to measure student assessment. Now here is the research question that the teachers, 13 teachers with UCL funding, we gathered together over 5 days of the academic year and published this report. You can scan the QR code here to have a deeper look. I'd like to think it was the first of its kind to publish research on verbal feedback in English state schools. And this was published just before the pandemic, September 2019, something like that. And this was the research question the teachers came up with, and we went off and tried. And there's lots more in here, but I want to move quickly away from this and just kind of say, here's me, Mark Quinn, working with the teachers, ethics, data collection, anonymity, gather research while you teach, trialing different ideas, reducing the burden of marking. And the conclusion in the research was this, that verbal feedback, when accompanied by a reduction or removal of written feedback entirely, doesn't negatively impact on the engagement or attainment of students. So define engagement in particular. So it's quite an instrumental piece of research, and other people have written research about this since, and it's a very powerful document for many people that haven't read it. So I would encourage you to consider it, because here's the rub. If I ask you, do you give your kids verbal feedback in your classrooms? Most teachers look at me silly and say, well, of course I give my students verbal feedback. I then say to the teacher, well, how do you do it? It can't just be a chat. Have you got a technique, a methodology? Could you teach it to me, please? And here lies the difficulty. It's a question most teachers haven't really thought about. Now, in the book and the research, I've got lots of techniques to help you. But here's the critical slide that's going to make you all think differently about marking and feedback forever. We typically, in our schools, classrooms, do these 3 forms of assessment: written, verbal, and non-verbal. We view number 1 as the most important, the king of feedback. We can evidence it, we can track it. Parents like it, inspectors like it, school leaders do too, and that's fine. But we don't value number 2 and 3. We know we do them, they're important, but we wouldn't necessarily want to evidence them. How many thumbs up did you give in class, for example, number 3 here on the screen. Feedback by definition means this: comparison of the actual status of the work where they were before. So we do this all the time. The world, teaching professions, fixated on this word feedback. Here's its definition. Here's where you were today, Ross. Here's where you were before in September. Let me compare how far you've come. Well done. Now, not a lot of teachers have heard of this word, feed up, and they do it every day. Ross, that's a grade 4. Your target's a grade 6. You've managed to do this in your objective. You've got these 2 parts left to do. And then we've got this one. Some teachers have heard of this, feed forward. You're a grade 4. Here's how to get to a 5. You've done this assessment objective. You need to do this part and this section here. We do that all the time, but very few teachers have heard of feed up or feed forward. We're fixated on the language, the linguistics of feedback. Now, working through Mark Plan Teach in schools all across the country, gathering school policies, I've got about 400 plus on my hard drive. All schools have the word feedback. All schools have the word verbal feedback, marking, mark once a week, deep marking, live marking, those kind of things. But very few talk about feed. In fact, less than 5 policies have feed up. A few more schools have feed forward, but that's it. But how do we get the whole profession to move towards this language of feed up, feedback, feed forward, and having a marking strategy to suit each of these 3? So I discovered these words have been around academically for 30 years, and Professor John Hattie, I was very lucky he wanted to write the foreword to the book and contribute and critique the research. I essentially interrogated the power of feedback research with Helen Timperley. And he published a really important piece of research in the pandemic that basically said, look, we didn't distinguish the different types of feedback. Let's look at it through feed up and feed forward. And I replied to John and said, well, why don't we look at it through a written, verbal, or a non-verbal lens too? And with my verbal feedback report used as inspiration and playing around with these different ideas in Mark Plan Teach 2, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been promoting these techniques. What if I mark your book and I write back on the journey? What if I feed up and write it in your book? What if I feed forward? What would these 3 marking techniques look like? And what about if I give verbal feedback? What would that script look like? Can I teach it to you? Yes, I can. And can I get you to do it in 30 seconds? Yes, I can. But can you do that to me? And what would it look like if I just talked to you about your grade or what to do next? As teachers, we tend to mush 8, 9, and 10 into one marking strategy. Well done, Ross. Look how far you've come. This is a grade so-and-so. Your target's an X. Do this next, do that next week. Or we say it to them as well. And that's fine. It's good for workloads, blah, blah, blah. But why can't we have 6 different techniques or these 3? These are tricky ones. There's one in the camera right now. So in the context, would I be feeding back, up, or forward? Now, the long story short, I have 9 school case studies with evidence that show you how you do all these different techniques. And to get this round your pedagogical thinking, here's a simple summary. Feedback means, how am I doing this? And it's a reflection on your journey to date. Or, sir, where am I going to next? That's what we call feed up. Or, what should I do next? Feed forward. Do this next, assess the objective, whatever it might be, and I'll write it, but I'll give you 3 possibilities, or I'll speak it through 3 possibilities, or non-verbal gestures, circling on the whiteboard with my red laser pen. You get that aha moment. Would that be a feedback, up, or forward non-verbal strategy? So here's your simple definitions, really good fuel for your pedagogy, something to think about, and not a lot of schools have thought about this before. But here is the crux. It doesn't matter what type of feedback you use. So there's reassurance for the whole profession. But what's important is students need to trust the assessment, the feedback being provided. So if you've ever taught outside your comfort zone, different subject, those kind of things, you might feel that when you're talking to students, you get the sense that they don't trust what you're saying. And here's the critical point. Students must be able to hear your feedback, understand it, and know how to act. And that's what matters most. And for me, that's your metacognition. So teaching students how to act on your feedback, doesn't matter the type, is what matters more than anything else. So in the book, for the training, I've showcased these 9 schools that are doing all these techniques and highlighting the work that they do and helping take your school into the next decade in a landscape of AI and increasing mental health, increasing attendance issues, things like that, and how we as teachers can refocus our efforts rather than this lazy thinking about feedback or marking or even live marking. It's not transformative enough. And if we're going to lose 43,500 teachers in England every single academic year and still have teachers on their kitchen table at home marking a pile of books by themselves instead of spending time with their family, we need to do something drastically different. So one of the exercises I do with the teachers in my teaching training days is fill in this document, give me 9 different techniques. And by the end of the training, I give teachers 27 different techniques here. And I'm going to show them very quickly. And in the training, we go into this in greater detail. So here's what the feedback up and forward looked like if you look down the columns. But I'm now working with a novice child in the red zone or an expert child or student in the bottom line here. And what would these prompts and techniques look like in terms of strategies if I was providing some formative assessment? Switching the columns from feedback up or forward to now written, verbal or non-verbal, well, here are what the strategies might look like from a novice to an expert student in my classroom. And if we could take that one step further, this top left box, let's divide the written format into feedback, up or forward. I then have 3 different techniques in this box alone and replicate that across this grid, 27 different techniques. Now, I'll remind you, not all schools and colleges are ready for this, but one day this content will go viral. And I'll be pleased to see that it goes viral, because we need to move away from this lazy assumption that feedback or live marking is the latest pedagogical technique. No, here it is here, yet to be discovered. And then as a whole school strategy, look at this calendar. This is my implementation plan. This is the last slide. Imagine the academic year, all the pinch points of teacher workload, when you collect data, when there is reports to be written, and when school leaders go off to dig around for quality assurance, looking in books and things like that. Well, imagine a more balanced approach. In September, it says verbal feed forward. I've just met the students. I'm using a script, a verbal script, and I'm helping them feed forward and telling them what to do next. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to test only, rather than going fishing into books? But I don't think we're confident enough as a profession, and certainly the inspection service isn't either. But internally, we have our own decision to make if we want to protect teacher workload and keep teachers in our school and stop them leaving the profession. Here's a more balanced approach using all the 9 techniques across the row. Obviously, you would mix these up, come up with your own versions, and adapt these according to whether you're working in early years, secondary, or FE. And again, in the training, I go into this in greater detail and give lots of examples. But let me just finish by reminding you, doesn't matter what type of feedback you use, it's do the students trust your feedback? Do they know how to act? That matters most. And if we want to move away from this landscape where teachers are marking by themselves, not sitting beside students, entering data on their computers all alone rather than with a child, or 43,500 teachers leaving the English teaching profession every year, we need to move to a richer approach to formative assessment and abolish perhaps the words marking and feedback, and move into the next decade in an era of attendance issues, AI, student mental health, teacher workload, where we have a richer, more balanced approach to formative assessment in these 9 ideas that I've presented. So this is just a little teaser video. I know a lot of people ask, so I'm just sharing this with school leaders and college leaders to watch, or teachers who think, right, I need to ask my head teacher to get Ross into our school. We're ready for this. So scan the QR code, look at the links in the video once I've finished the broadcast, and you can learn a little bit more about guide to feedback to transform not only your workload, but your student outcomes too. Bye for now.